everyone. Hopefully everybody are healthy and happy today. Especially during the pandemic COVID-19 like now, we have to always maintain our health and don't forget to obey the protocol rules that apply. My name is Dewa Putri Wijaya. I'm student of English Education Department Uniksa. My student ID number is 2012 021 111. My absent number is 21 and I'm from 2D class. I'm super excited to be here. The opportunity to talk with you today means everything for me. For today's presentation, the topic that we are going to talk is the differences between IQ or intellectual intelligence and EQ or emotional intelligence. But before we move to our main topic, I want to ask you, what is IQ and EQ? So here are the definition of IQ according to psychologists. According to David Weisler, intelligence or IQ is an individual's ability to think and act in a directed manner to process and control the environment effectively. There is also, according to Schuner, IQ or intellectual intelligence is the ability to solve problems logically and academically. So that IQ or intellectual intelligence is refers to the potential possessed by individuals to learn something through thinking tools, and these abilities can be judged from a person's verbal and logical thinking abilities. Next is the definition of EQ according to psychologists. The first one is, according to Mayer and Solovey, define emotional intelligence or EQ as a set of parts of social intelligence that the ability to monitor social feelings that involves the ability to, in other people, sort them all out and use this information to guide thought and action. There is also, according to Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize our own feelings and those of others, the ability to motivate ourselves, and the ability to manage emotions well in ourselves and relationships with others. So I can conclude that EQ or emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize or manage emotions or feelings, both emotions in oneself and others or empathy, and self-motivation as well as the ability to build relationships or cooperation with others. So now we are moving to our main topic, the differences between IQ and EQ. In assessing intelligence, so far people fixated on IQ or intellectual intelligence, whereas EQ or emotional intelligence is also an important factor in identifying people's intelligence. In fact, these two types of intelligence are very different. Here are the differences between IQ and EQ. The first one, EQ can represent a person's emotional value. Generally, the EQ value is seen when a person performs several standardized tasks to get an EQ score. On the other hand, IQ is a score value obtained from intelligent tasks carried out and represents a person's logical reasoning ability. And you can also find this argument in Halodoc article by Dr. Gabriela Florencia in 2020 and Sehatki article, The Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia by Dina Rahmawati and reviewed by Dr. Carolina Lestari in 2020. The second difference is IQ is brought from birth, contrary to the EQ can be taught. So genetic factors play a role in the formation of IQ so that it can be carried from birth. Contrary to EQ can be taught, honed, and reinforcement at any time, especially from an early age. You can also find this argument in tribunjogja.com article by Ari Nugroho in 2020. Next is, those who have a high IQ have more capacity to work on problems that require mathematical data. In contrast to those who have a high EQ, they are more able to solve the social problems. Having a high EQ means that you are close to the environment to be able to to be able to get the attention from the audience, and also influencing public interest to follow their attention. And this argument also can be found in Halodoc article by Dr. Gabriela Florencia in 2020. The last difference is IQ success individually, by contrast EQ can lead the team. So people with high IQ tend to be successful individually because they can use their reasoning to achieve what they want. Meanwhile, the people with high EQ can work well in a team, and they also can be leaders. This argument can be also found in Qualitiva.id article in 2020. So although IQ and EQ have many differences, but they are also have the similarities. So the similarities between IQ and EQ are they have the same function to measure a person's intelligence, because in IQ and EQ there is nothing bad because they are complement each other. If a person have a high IQ and a good EQ, that person will be able to achieve success and create opportunities without creating a new problems. So that's the end of my presentation about the differences between IQ and EQ. I hope that the topic that I have conveyed can be useful for all of us. And I can conclude that today's presentation is quite successful because you have paid attention to the presentation very well. And the conclusion that I can convey to the topic today is that although IQ and EQ have many differences, but they are equally important, because if you want to be successful, you have to balance your intellectual intelligence and also your emotional intelligence. Because as a wise man said, an intelligent person is one who has progressed successfully but still wants to learn more. Okay, so thank you so much for listening and your great attention. I hope that we can meet again in the next opportunity. See you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.